All right, so I am going to talk a little bit about skip counting, and I'm going to show you some tools that I like to use in the classroom, some manipulatives here. First one is this hundreds chart. This one's pretty obvious. It gives kids a nice visual of numbers 1 through 100, and they can use this as a tool for future reference when they need to start solving for actual multiplication problems. They'll have this tool at their disposal here. When you're teaching a skip counting, you want to start with the easiest numbers, then obviously work down to the more difficult ones. So we are going to be starting with tens. And then here, when you're looking at it in this format, you can pretty clearly see that it's down the line here on the right-hand side, and that they all end in zeros. You could even cover up the zeros and just kind of show them that without the zeros in the ones place, you are just looking at the tens place value, and then it's just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with a 0 on the end. So you can show them that. That one's pretty quick. They're going to get that fairly quick. You will be able to start counting with them together, start doing it verbally, and then it will become rote memorization at that point. And then after you got the tens down, you want to jump down to fives. So fives, I like to, it was a little more difficult because you're seeing that we have two columns now that we're going to be counting by. And then you are going to be bouncing back and forth, right? So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. It's either going to end in a 0 or a 5. Unlike tens, it always ends in a 0. So then you are adding another feature to it where it's going to be ending in either a 5 or a 0. But again, you can show them that if you cover the fives, once you get past the fives, it is going to end in a 1, or start in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And then they can sort of see that pattern recognition. I also like to provide this guy here. I've used this in the past, and this one is basically a printed out version of the laminated one that I show you, which I think it's important to laminate the ones that you have because then you can write on it with an Expo marker or a Vis-a-Vis marker and then wipe it away as you need so you can continue using it. But I like to give them a paper copy of this one and highlight the number that we are going to be counting by to get them to visualize its placement on this chart, and then also they can keep this for reference when we're doing multiplication problems that have a 5 involved. So you can go ahead and see this here, and then if you want to take it a step further, if you have students that like a little bit more of a difficult task, they do even have ones online. I found all of these online for free, so they're pretty easy to come by. Ones that are blank here. Blanks in the targeted number that we're counting by, and students will go in and fill those numbers out on their own, and then they can keep that. So they're seeing something, they're doing something, and then they have something that they've created that they can refer back to as a tool. I think that's really helpful, and it also kind of ties in a little bit of pride with something they have. They're not going to want to throw it away or lose it. Maybe they might. It's very possible, but they might have a little more sense of pride in it since it is something they created in this tool that they made. And then obviously once you get more advanced, you can do 2s and 4s and all of these. So these charts are very helpful, a very helpful tool to have in your little toolbox for when you are starting skip counting in the end goal of using multiplication. So another one I love to use is our handy dandy number line. I have this one from 0 to 20. And then this one is nice because I also laminated this one. Each one of my students have one. And I like to have both an Expo marker and a Vis-a-Vis marker on hand because you can use the Vis-a-Vis marker as sort of a semi-permanent solution for when you're doing your lesson. If you're, let's say you're counting by 2s, you can go ahead of time and just mark down all of the numbers that we'll be counting by when we are counting by 2s. So that way when you give them a problem such as 2 times 4, you can go ahead and mark these out for them ahead of time, and then they can come in when they're doing theirs with an Expo because it's quick and easy to erase, a dry erase marker. You can go ahead and start, like let's say 2 by 4, you'll start at the 2, say 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 2 times 4 is 8. So you kind of see that, and they see that pattern that they're skipping a number, and they're skipping just one number. And eventually you won't need these dots because they'll understand that when you're counting by twos, you're just skipping one number. So that's going to make more sense to them in the future. But this is a nice head start, and I love using these tools because students need to have that visual representation when they're first learning a task. We have lots of varieties of learners, whether it's visual, hands-on. But this one, I think, is always a tool that is going to be helpful. And I like to stress using the number line from the very beginning so that way they are familiar with it. It's not something novel and something scary. It's something they know and are comfortable with when you are just starting out doing single-digit addition. Because then, you know, it makes a lot of sense. You see a 4, 4 plus 5. You start at the 4 and you just go over 5 more. Right? So like they know how to use this if you start from the very beginning, and a lot of teachers do, and I highly suggest you do as well, and keep one handy. Again, like I said, I laminated mine. You don't necessarily have to. I remember when I was a kid, it was a lot of paper copies, not as many laminations, and we used the end of a pencil eraser. And as you're using the end of a pencil eraser, it kind of leaves this trail of green fluff behind, so you can see what you're doing when you are using the end of your eraser, and you can just dust it away. So a couple ideas for you there, and I hope you find these helpful. I know that I do, and I use them quite often with my students and my children at home, so I hope they become useful for you as well. Thanks for watching.